Sports on your dial right now. They see stories every play, every time with Rob Browne breaking it all down. Yeah. SEC Sidelines Sports on my mind. Rob Browne calling game time, highlight shine, executive mind. Brendan Martin keeping Rob in line. Like, subscribe, share it, tell everyone. Sideline Sports, y'all come back real soon. Same place, same time, same tune.
Man,
What?
it is cold, and I'm loving it. I love that song. The band, Brendan and the boys.
It warms your heart, doesn't it? Your cold little Memphis heart, doesn't it, Rob?
Yes, it does.
Get off your phone, Rob. Your show's on. God bless America. Stop texting people, Robert.
I'm trying to send something to you, but anyway,
I'm on with you now. Here.
Great show today.
Look at my eyes.
It is cold, man. It is 19 here. Look, everybody's cold. A lot of you are without power. I did talk to Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. He'll join us in the second half hour. Bottom line, you won't believe this. He has power, and basically everybody else in Oxford doesn't. So we got Jordan Davis Hill, 247 Sports, Georgia, batting in the leadoff position. Ralph Russo, senior writer for The Athletic, will join us at 15 after. Also, second half, Yancy Porter and Chris Lee of Southeastern 16. So get ready. Take a picture with your cell phone of the QR code. We're broadcasting live, streaming on 8 channels of Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And look, let's get this cold day started.
The cold weather makes you slow, Rob. I don't know. You're usually just jumping off the deck right now, and you are like the slowest human in the world right now. I don't even know how to deal with this version of Robert Browne.
Well, you know what? We went outside to take the dogs
Did you
out.
take the non-chill gummies today and do that?
None. I've had none. I'm going to get warmed up though, because now we got Jordan and talking about Georgia right now. We've had an interesting discussion yesterday with Pete Cordelli and Ellis Johnson and Dave Bartu about the SEC. We're kind of at a fork in the road right now. What we've been doing the last 3 or 4 years, it ain't getting a national championship. Big Ten's won 3 in a row. Specifically, Georgia, 21-22 back-to-back, go 12-0 and 23, lose the SEC championship game to Alabama. They go, you don't. What's going on at Georgia? A deep dive right now. I know everybody wants to blame Mike Bobo, but there's a lot of talent, a lot of passion, and I think the best coach in college football.
Well, I think the biggest thing, guys, is you've gotten to see how small the margin for error is. And I can't remember who it was a few weeks ago was top of my list, but they made a great point. You know, you look at those back-to-back national championships, people like to forget that Georgia was an Ohio State field goal away from losing in the semifinal in 2022. I just think some of the breaks that Georgia got along the way, the breaks that every national championship team gets, this is not Georgia specific. They just haven't had them the last few years. And I think what I'm really interested in, guys, you know, we talk about this drought for the SEC after so many years of domination. We've talked about it on this show too. Rob, you know what is not going to help that? An extra conference game every year. Kirby Smart kind of sounded the alarm on that after the SEC title game this year. And I mean, I think that you're looking at a situation where a lot of these SEC teams are beat up by the end of the year. They get in the playoff, and you know, you got situations like we saw with Georgia. They drew an SEC team to start the playoff, and Ole Miss found a way to win. Ole Miss, you know, deserved to win that game, but you know, I'm fascinated to see what's up for the league as a whole, not just Georgia, these next few years, because it's not going to be easy for them to break this Big Ten streak. And I'm very much a proponent that adding a 9th conference game, as much fun as that's going to be for us as viewers to watch that during the regular season, that's not going to make things easy when it comes to trying to make a run come the playoff.
Well, I mean, Pete Cordelli made a great point yesterday. He said, can you imagine what it's going to be like at the spring meetings in Destin when the 9-game conference schedule is brought up and Kirby Smart is asked about that? And he might reply, well, nobody asked us.
Well, the thing to me, as much as I do think that there's truth in what Kirby was saying, this has been in the conversation for several years now. So that was a little late to decide that this was going to be something to talk about. It had already been decided by the time that SEC title game between Georgia and Alabama had been played. So on one hand, I understand that they're frustrated, but they've had every opportunity, and not just Kirby, the other coaches, to speak up if they felt strongly about this. Part of the conversation when the 9 game was first brought up was, well, we want to watch this 12-team playoff for at least a couple of years. We kind of want to get some data points. They got one data point and then decided this was what they wanted to see. And I want to make sure that folks listening to this, I like it from the standpoint of getting to see more good football games during the regular season. That doesn't mean that's what the conference needed to do. I mean, I think at the end of the day, they knew ESPN would give them more money, so they took more money. But I think if you're looking at what it means for your playoffs and trying to break the streak, I definitely don't think it helps the SEC. If the main goal is we want to unseat the Big Ten, we want to win another, we want another SEC team to win a national title, making 9 conference games ain't gonna do it.
I don't think so. And Dave Bartu talked about strength of schedule. I remember one time I was out running or walking the dogs this summer. 15 of the 16 SEC schools were in the top 16 of strength of schedule. Missouri was the bottom guy at number 20. What did that get us? Nothing.
No, I mean, I think part of the conversation now, you have to factor in. I want to shout out my coworker Ben Wolt did a good job around the December signing period. When the classes were solidified. There's been some movement since that signing day, but he pointed out if you look at that the 2026 signing classes on that signing day in December, the top score of the top classes was basically the lowest it's been, I think, in at least 10 years. That tells you that the talent is being spread out. And the difference from like 15 to 30 of the top classes, much smaller than we've seen in recent years. The talent's being more spread out, and it's because of NIL. It's because, you can't put all your resources and build these mega classes like you could in the past. Now, some schools still can, but you're not seeing it, where it's just you can pencil in Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama for the top 3 classes, and everybody fights for basically 5th on. So it's not going to be easy. The way that talent is now being distributed, I think you're seeing that with the teams we're talking about contending, and then that's not even to factor in the portal. The SEC's got a lot on their hands if they're going to break back through, and it's not going to be easy. At least I don't think so.
I agree. Great quote before a track meet one time. Everybody, squeeze your hand as hard as you can. You're like sweat coming down the side of your head. Now squeeze it a little harder. That's where we are in the SEC.
Don't squeeze my hand up.
Yeah, well, your hand, but it shows you the pressure that we're under. And I love these comments. A warm day at Indian Pass Pirate down there at Cape Sandblast there in Florida near Mexico Beach. 27. Holy cow. Cool. T-shirt weather. Brendan and I both got to ask you this. You look at Georgia, the quarterback situation. Gunnar Stockton, he is a tough kid. He's one of my favorite college football players. He's the ultimate teammate. What's the upside? What's the ceiling on him?
Well, it's hard to say as far as what the ceiling is. I mean, I think he's a guy that can be a Heisman finalist. I think he's a guy that, at the end of the day, a lot of Georgia fans were frustrated. They bow out of the college football playoff in the quarterfinals again. I still think he's a guy Georgia can win a national title with. And again, I've mentioned a few minutes ago, the margin for error is so small in the SEC. If he throws a touchdown pass on 3rd and goal instead of throwing an incompletion, we're talking about, Georgia's season may stay alive. They may make a run, but we're certainly not talking about, what I've seen over on Dogs 24/7 a good bit that, people are writing off Gunnar and don't think he's any good. I think he can get Georgia where they want to go. And I think having this year of experience will help him in 2026. My biggest thing, there's 2 things that when I look at Gunnar, he has to do better. He has to be more willing to throw the ball down the field. I did a story on Monday that was sort of just Georgia by the numbers, the statistics that define Georgia's 2025 season. And one of the things I pointed out, ADOT, average depth of target. What is the average pass you are going to throw how far down the field?
Yeah.
Gunnar's was 6.3, and that was the lowest of the 12 quarterbacks in the college football playoff. and it was tied for 15th of the 16 SEC. The quarterbacks who started the majority of the games for their team in 2025, that was tied with Jackson Arnold. And I don't think I got to tell Rob that Jackson Arnold did not have a good season at Auburn. So Gunner's got to throw it down the field a little bit more. And maybe we see that out of necessity because Zachariah Branch, a lot of that was because they threw a ton of screens to Zachariah Branch. And Zachariah Branch is going to the NFL. The other thing I would point out with Gunner, what he's got to do better, straight up, he's got to take better care of himself. I think that, he's a guy that's going to lay it all out there, and I think that makes him a fan favorite and really makes him someone his teammates love to play for. And you heard that throughout. But I think taking those hits, diving for first downs, I can't remember, they were playing, might have been Austin Peay. It was someone like that, an inferior opponent, where he's just like laying it all out there. And it's like, man, you don't got to do that in a game like this. And I think it caught up with him by the time we were talking about the Georgia Tech game at the end of the regular season. And I think having that layoff from the SEC title game to the playoff really helped Gunner try to get healthy. I think if he does a better job of taking care of himself, he's going to run some. He had a really good season as far as running the football, but you've got to be smarter because it is a long season. And if you're if you go where Georgia wants you to go, we're talking 15, 16 games. If he's a little bit smarter about taking hits, sometimes you just got to take a sack and fall down. If he does a better job of that, I think that bodes well for what he can do for an entire season for Georgia.
I mean, I love the toughness that he brings, and he's definitely the leader. You go in the locker room, no question, he's your quarterback. All right. Cummins and
you're right though, Jordan. It takes the hit. I mean, look at Tebow even over the end of those years. His thing was he'd go fire you up by going knocking somebody out. Then you get knocked out, and you become mortal, and kryptonite is in your hands, and you're like Superman. So these things happen.
It takes a toll on you. I mean, the time you hit,
you start hearing footsteps, as you say, and the little things that you don't know are out there, wondering if you're going to take another crackback block and lose your consciousness.
That's what Ben Troop told us one time. He said, you see everybody hugging each other on each other's on both teams after the game. He goes, "We're just glad we're not hurt." He said, "It's like being in a car wreck on Sunday," and I don't think it's much different in the SEC. All right, a couple more things before you go. 247 Sports, Jordan Davis Hill. Ben Wolk is his name. That's how do you spell it?
WOLK.
Yeah. You refer to him a lot, and I hope people out there, if you're a Georgia fan, just a college football fan, you need to be paying attention to Jordan. He always has great information, but Ben really gets into the recruiting, and it matters because I got to ask you before you go, the comings and goings in the transfer portal, are you satisfied with what Georgia brought in, and were you hurt by what they lost?
Starting with what they brought in, I think they did a good job. The only positions I would say that you would maybe look and think that they needed to bring in a little bit more help, offensive tackle. They lost Monroe Freeland to the NFL draft. He's a guy that might wind up being a first-round pick. They bring back Ernest Green, but they've got real questions of who will be that other starting offensive tackle. And Ernest Green's a guy that's dealt with injury, so you don't feel real great about that situation either. And then interested to see what they do with slot receiver because they've been in the mix. Trey Richardson, a guy from Vanderbilt. Georgia was really interested there. He winds up at Louisville. What are they going to do there? Otherwise, I think they did a good job of addressing some needs in the portal, getting Amaris Williams from Auburn. I think that's going to help in the pass rushing sense. A guy I think is underrated, Dante Dowdell, that they got from Kentucky. I think he's going to play a good bit. And getting help at safety, Jamarly Riddle, that they got from East Carolina. I think he's a guy who can start. And Khalil Barnes, a guy they got from Clemson, a veteran guy. And as far as departures, there's really only two I consider significant hits. Janelle Aguero goes to Ole Miss. He was their starting nickelback, but I also say that and say that looking at Rayshawn Dinkins, he was a guy that stepped up when Janelle got hurt. And I think they feel comfortable with Rayshawn being their star going forward. And then a young guy that didn't play a lot, but I think has tremendous potential, Dominic Kelly, transfers to Ohio State. Now, he may not play for Ohio State in 2026, but that is a significant loss. I think he's a guy who reclassified. He should have been a high school senior last year. Played a little bit more. He was a reserve, played in some mop-up duty. But I think Dominic Kelly's a very talented cornerback. Don't forget his name. I think he has a chance maybe 2 years from now to be a really big factor for Ohio State.
Jordan Davis Hill, 247 Sports. Tell them how they can follow you because you put out information constantly. And Ben needs to be followed if you love recruiting because it's the lifeblood of your program.
Absolutely. Ben does a great job, and hope folks will join us over on dogs247.com. We're on Twitter at dogs247. I'm on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill. A lot of good content over there. And in the thick of men's basketball season, and you guys know it, we're going to turn around and be like, man, we're in spring practice. So it'll be here before you know it. Georgia baseball getting started pretty soon. So busy time.
The Rainbows report to spring practice in Hawaii in about 2 weeks. So we're already there, bro.
Can't wait.
I love it. Jordan, have a great week. Stay warm over there, okay? Thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys.
You bet. Bring in another one. It's one of my favorites, Ralph Russo. Ralph, one of my friends, my wife's cousin, Mark, his daughter's doing her internship.
Best set ever. New award to Ralph Russo. You've got the best, coolest set, man. Good job, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I love it. My wife's cousin, Mark, his daughter's doing her internship in New York while she's at Georgia. She's in accounting with KPMG. So she's up there right now out in the snow in Central Park. How much did y'all get a lot of it?
We got about, I want to say maybe about a foot, which, for New York, that's a lot, but it also is not crippling, right? Yeah. We're used to snow up here. So actually we did a good job of getting it off the streets. The plows came. Now, the issue is it's ridiculously cold today and for the next week. So it's not going anywhere. Like the piles are going to freeze and become ice cubes. And, if you haven't dug your car out, it's not getting out. So the snow was okay. It was manageable. It was nice to have it on a Sunday. It makes the city look pretty for about 12 hours. But then it just becomes slush and ice and stuff like that. So it's not going anywhere. What's on the street is going to stay there for a long while.
That's what you all didn't get the rain then you associated with afterwards.
No, we ended up getting sleet. So basically it snowed ice for about 4 or 5 hours. Yeah. It was a little bit of a rough one, but again, we're kind of used to it up here. I know y'all down south sometimes 2 or 3 inches, 4 or 5 inches, man, it takes a while to get rid of that. Having lived down there, I know it.
Yeah. Mississippi, the state is most of the state, northeast Mississippi, does not have power. And here in Memphis, I'm over in Parkin at the farm right outside of Memphis. It was 7 or 8 degrees last night, but there's nowhere for the snow to go. If you don't have 4-wheel drive, you can't get around. But
we have a freeze warning. I mean, that's about where we go in Florida. So
freeze warning.
Freeze warning is all we have. So we're gonna batten down the hatches, so we'll be okay.
A Hugh freeze warning just means that you got you only got 9 holes instead of 18, right?
That's right.
That means you're playing 27 that day. That's what that means.
That's right.
Doing the huge feast 27.
Ralph, you put out so much good content. I know I ask you a lot to come on the show. You are busier than a one-legged man in a kick fight, but you're so good. And what you're doing at The Athletic is so damn important because you have earned your place in the top of the college football journalistic world because you were AP's chief guy in Mississippi for 5 years, I think. You've done the road trips. You've eaten a lot of heat lamp food at 2 a.m. because that's all you could get because you were trying to make a deadline. Tell us right now, get us fired up about college football. I am in here freezing. The heat's out in the house. I got a heater going, but it's better than it was yesterday. Tell us about college football, kind of wrap this season up and where we're going, playoffs, whatever's on your mind.
Yeah, we got such an interesting time in college football, and literally right before I went on here with you guys. And by the way, I very much appreciate the kind words and the flattery. I'm not sure if it's deserved, but I very much appreciate.
You're an awesome dude. No, we love you.
Right before I came on here, yet another story, another transfer portal saga was resolved. It looks like Duke and now former quarterback Darian Mensah came to some kind of resolution that will settle the lawsuit that Duke filed against him, and he's going to be allowed to not just enter the transfer portal but find a new school. And we all have a pretty good idea that the new school is going to end up being Miami. And that's just yet another example of off the field, things are kind of screwed up. Right? Like we don't really have well-defined rules. Some would say we have no rules. If you even want to bring in college basketball and some of the stuff that's going on there with Alabama and some of these pros coming back, it's really tumultuous. and we're not in a great place off the field. But if we go back a week and a day to when Indiana beat Miami in the national title game, a great national title game, with maybe the best story in the history of college football, Indiana, one of the losingest programs of all time, in 2 years becoming good enough to win a national championship, which is sort of emblematic of the fact that, like, hey, the good parts about the transfer portal, these teams can get good quickly. Like, guys move around and it spreads the talent out a little bit. It's been a little bit of a problem for the top of the SEC, right? Schools like Alabama can't quite hoard the players like they used to. Jordan was on here talking about Georgia. So I think on the field, I don't know if the sport's ever been healthier. The TV ratings are through the roof. Attendance is great. The product, the games are awesome. Off the field, not so much, but it's a weird time insofar as there's so much that needs to be done and sorted out off the field, and it's a very slow evolution to whatever the next iteration of college football is going to be. The expanded playoff, I think, has mostly been a success, but then when they try to expand it again, going to the off the field, the SEC and the Big Ten are at stalemates and they can't make up their minds over what they want. So there's a lot of angst off the field, a lot of not a lot of cooperation going on at a time when we need that. But the product is really good and the play is really good. And there's probably a little more parity. I just think there's a lot of positives on the field while there's a lot of negative off the field, which creates, kind of a strange dichotomy right now for college sports fans.
It really does. Kurt Cignetti, 2 years, he gets it done. The losingest program. Now they're the second losingest program in the history of college football. They moving on up.
They came into the season with 715 losses. They played 16 games and still have 715 losses. That's incredible, man.
It really is. But now, Brendan's dad, Buddy, asked me last week on the Lowdown with Lauren Meadows on this channel, Rob, do you think that puts any more pressure on coaches going forward? And I said, absolutely. Expand on that.
Yeah, my colleagues and I did a story that's on The Athletic today, though I must admit they did the heavy lifting on it. We asked coaches, mostly head coaches and some assistant coaches around college football, like, what is the lesson that you learned from Indiana that's applicable? Like, in some ways, listen, a lesson is not go find a former 2-star and make him a Heisman Trophy winner, right? That's probably not going to happen that often. But what are the more broad lessons? And I think some of the things you came away with are going back to what we talked about before, when there's a little more parity and the teams at the top have come down a little bit and the teams at the bottom have moved up a little bit, I think all the other stuff matters even more. The coaching matters even more. The chemistry matters even more. So maybe it's not that you want to necessarily have a team full of 3-stars, but if you're smart in your evaluations and the way those guys fit in your system and the way those guys fit in your culture, you might be able to have a championship level team full of 3-stars as opposed to nowadays not just recruiting 4 and 5 stars, but spending on 4 and 5. There's something to be said about having an older team. Right? COVID year is kind of phasing out, but a lot of guys are still hanging around college football for a while. I mean, there's some again going back to the off the field. We got some eligibility issues that we need to figure out, but you have a lot more guys who are like, yeah, I'll take a 4th year. I'll take a 5th year. I'll be 22, 23 because I can get paid here. Like, that's replicable. Like, you may not have as many 25 and 26-year-olds, but you're still going to have a lot of 24 and 22 and 23-year-olds hanging around college football. So I think the takeaway is there are new ways to build a championship team, but you also have to be really good at evaluating, really good at setting culture, really good at coaching. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Like, you're not just going to be able to say, yeah, we're Indiana now. We recruited a bunch of older guys. But I think that there's a path there that other coaches are looking at and saying, what can we take from here, from there, and apply here that might help us take a step forward? Again, you're probably not going to go 16-0 and win a national championship, but I think a lot of schools are looking around at Indiana and saying, yes, we have hope. the downside of that is, oh, our fans are going to want us to do that, and do it quickly.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering how long it's going to take for some school out there. We've seen the private equity possibility with Utah at $500 million. Again, I mean, as a financial advisor since May of '91, managing people's money and risk. What could possibly go wrong? Everything if you don't do it right. But when is some school going to go up to Wall Street and find a money manager, a hedge fund manager? Paul Tudor Jones from Memphis. He's a big Virginia fan. John Paul Jones Arena after his father, who loves basketball. Courtside at every Grizzlies game his entire adult life. But when is that going to happen? Because putting in growth stocks, value stocks, dividend stocks, income, you've got to manage your roster like that. And you can do it quickly. But if you fall behind and you say, have a pout face and say, I'm not going to do this, you're Dabo Swinney.
Yeah. Or,
love the guy. I love him,
No, absolutely. And frankly, so I don't think Alabama's issue right now is a lack of will to do this, to try to invest. I do think for some schools, I would be interesting would have been interested to ask Jordan this question, if he feels like Georgia is really maxing out where they could be in terms of investment. And I ask that not because they're not investing at all, but I think with some schools, they got very comfortable, like, well, we're Georgia. You're going to come here because we're Georgia.
Yep.
And isn't that enough? To which a lot of guys are saying, nah, that ain't enough, right? Like that's, and also it's partially, a saying I've been had throughout all of this changeover to like paying players. No matter how much you invest and how great your legacy is and how many championship trophies you have in your lobby, only one guy can be the highest paid player on your team. Right. So if another guy looks at himself and says, well, I could be the highest paid player on that team. Like, why do I have to come and be the second highest paid player or the third or the fourth highest paid player on your team when I could be the highest paid player on that team? So I set all that up to say, you're right. I think all these schools need to be looking at, where do we find some money? And listen, I think there's a very real concern about, if you're putting so much money into football, what happens to all your other sports? Again, we go back to the off the field. We still have issues there. How is that going to be funded? But I think if you're looking at your football program, where am I getting different lines of revenue? How can I max out everything here? How can I do things that are somewhat above board? And what exactly is above board? Because the idea of a $20 million salary cap for all your sports, which was at the House settlement, has already become a bit of a farce. I think football alone is well surpassing that. So yeah, you need people who can manage money, create revenue streams, and then direct it to your players in a way that won't get you in trouble, though we find ourselves wondering, is there any way that will get you in trouble?
Well, it's interesting. Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, comes on right after you today. Said it last week that the traditional football schools with rev sharing $21.5 million are more than likely going to put the bulk of that into football.
No doubt.
Basketball schools do the opposite. Now, Kentucky allegedly put $22 million in Mark Pope's second year in NIL. They're not lighting the world on fire in basketball. Nobody can really explain this to me. Can you? Is there a finite amount? You cannot go above this?
Not really, because the best way I can describe it is you have your 20, right? This year it's 20.5 million, 20.5 million for revenue share. And that is dispersed among all your athletes. And as you said, for most schools, give or take 70 to 75% of that is going to football. The rest, a lot of it's going to men's basketball. You have some in women's. And in other schools, like, if you're Oklahoma, I'm sure you have some going to softball, right? Because you're really good at softball. If you're Kentucky, you probably have some going to, maybe a little bit going to your volleyball players, right? Because that's a program that you might be might be very important to you. So, but you can still get over the cap by certain types of NIL deals that are third-party deals with big companies that pass through again, we're going to get into the arcane here, right? The NIL Go system with the College Sports Commission. There are still some NIL deals that pass through as valid NIL deals with bigger companies. And what schools are trying to do now through their MMR partners, multimedia rights, Learfield, that name I'm sure rings a bell to a lot of college sports fans. Playfly is another one that's new in the space. Through their apparel deal companies, Nike, Adidas. They're trying to come up with creative ways to direct some of the money that they get from those partnerships to their players in the form of NIL deals that count outside of that revenue sharing. And you still have traditional collectives out there trying to, again, pass muster, come up with legitimate deals that can count outside the rev share. And that's how you get above the cap. Now, again, is it legal? Is it passing muster? That's still, there's a lot of gray area there too, where like maybe something is legal, but should it be? I understand the idea we're in a little bit of a wild, wild west, but really what we're in is a period of transition where we're flying the plane while building it.
And that's you're right. And before you go, you write so much in The Athletic. Obviously, we cover football, we cover basketball and everything. But man, it's hard not to talk about football. It makes the grass grow. And Chris Lee is our next guest, following you from Southeastern 16 with Yancy. We can't get enough of this stuff. The number 32.3 million watching that Indiana game. You're right. I think it's like the 6 o'clock news. I say this every day. People want to see what was that 10-car pileup on the interstate I saw. They off the field is one thing, but we cannot get enough. It's like great Italian food, and you're going to give us one or two great restaurants before you go.
So here's the one difference. I'll push back on you a little bit there, Rob. I don't like, you're right. It is a bit of a 10-car pileup off the field. Like I can't really argue. It's a bit of a mess off the field. The difference is the product, the entertainment value of the product on the field. When you say we get to tune in, it's such a great release. You forget about all the nonsense off the field. It completely takes you away because the players are great and the storylines are great and the coaching storyline, and even some, I will agree with you a little bit there. Even some of the nonsense off the field, when it does bleed into the on the field, creates this, well, I can't wait to see Lane Kiffin go to Ole Miss. Like that's going to be wild, right? So I'm signing up to watch that game. So it just creates so much drama. We are a nation addicted to football, for better or worse. But good for us, right?
Yeah,
pays my bills. Pays my bills. So I just think that when you sit down and watch the games, I'll clean up the language because sometimes I say it in a more harsh manner. What I often tell people who work in college sports, commissioners, ADs, when we're sort of maybe having a beer, being a little off the cuff, I'll say, you know what, guys, no matter how hard you screw this up, how hard you try to screw this up, you can't screw up Saturdays. Like Monday through Friday, the sport is a circus, but on Saturday, it's all good. And we sit back on Saturday and we watch 12 hours of games. And man, it's the best day of the week. And as long as that's the case, guys, like I think we'll figure out a way to get through the problems. We'll progress. It may take a while and it ain't going to be easy, but I think we'll figure out a way to get there. Sorry, it's a little long.
No, I think
good to meet you, Chris.
Yeah, and Chris does a great show, Southeastern 16, and we cover all 16. It's like you have 16 kids and covering them all. You can't get enough. And I've got The Athletic pulled up, show prep every day. That Football Writers Association of America. I follow Tony Barnhart and you, and you put out. God, you put out so much good stuff. Again, we got to eat, and we got to eat every day. We don't have to, but we need to. And I'm not going on a football hunger strike. So keep writing it. Let people know how they can follow you and tell them something positive. I always like to leave them with something to get them fired up and get out of bed because it's going to be a great day.
Yeah. Without question. First of all, obviously come subscribe to The Athletic. Please. Yeah, I understand. You got to make choices with your money. It ain't easy these days. So, but if you can, love to get that subscription. Come read me and all my great teammates, Bruce Feldman, Stuart Mandel, David Ubben. We got a lot of really good people there that make, that I pale in comparison to. Ralph D. Russo, ATH on X, and a couple of other sites, Ralph D. Russo, ATH. I'll give you something positive in the form of it. When next time you come to New York, Rob, you got to go to Queens for this restaurant. It's called Barossa, Barossa, Italian restaurant. It's on Woodhaven Boulevard, not far from Queens Boulevard. People who are from New York will know exactly where that is. It's actually pretty easy to get to because it's right off the LIE.
Yeah.
I went there last week. It was my sister's birthday. We had a huge Italian meal, Clams Casino, had a great pasta dish. I had a risotto dish with broccoli rabe and sausage. It was shrimp parmesan for my brother-in-law. So Barossa in Queens, if you're up for it being a little adventurous, that's a little something for you for folks who come to New York City.
We will tell Molly to go there, and a lot of my friends go up there. And my daughter, my son-in-law, my niece, my nephew, they work up there every week. So we'll tell them. Ralph, thank you. Let's do it again soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right, I'm hungry right now after hearing from Ralph. Chris Lee, Southeastern 16. First off, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Now, are you in Nashville proper, Davidson, Williamson? Are you up in Hendersonville? Because folks I know up in Nashville, a lot of them, they've got Generac generators going 24/7 right now.
I'm in Franklin, and let me tell you, one of the underrated things of our time is underground power lines, because we've kept ours the whole time.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, like 50-something years ago, we moved into a house my dad designed, and they had the neighborhood. One of the things that underground power lines back then. It is so underrated that you don't think about it until you have an ice storm, Chris. Mm-hmm. But it's not keeping people from wanting to talk about what's going on in the SEC. There's a lot of news. I'm just going to put the ball in your hands, and Yancy Porter should join us momentarily. He's in Oxford. Believe it or not, he's one of about 23 people with power. The rest of them don't have it.
Right.
And Audrey says, well, he probably lives next door to the head of the local gas, light, and water power guy. But Yancy should join us. But what are the stories right now that are really keeping you captivated? You're writing, you're talking about, because you do a great podcast, and I want people to know about it.
Yeah, well, to be honest, my attention right now is on baseball, because we're rolling out our coverage. Not that I'm not paying attention to other things, because how can you not? But that's where my focus is at the moment this morning, followed by basketball, and then, of course, just the constant craziness of football. By the way, I loved the phrase Ralph used there. And by the way, I do subscribe to The Athletic. They do great work.
They do.
But the flying the plane while they're building it, I just think that was a perfect way to sum it up.
That's brilliant.
Yes. That's why he is where he is.
Yeah. And look, Chris, so much going on 1 through 16 in the SEC. Last week, Pete Cordelli and Ellis and Dave Bartu were saying, why are these coaches leaving Missouri football and going to New Mexico and other places like that? It was 5 years ago not uncommon to stack 2 and 3 deep, 4 stars and some 5 stars on your roster at some of the upper level SEC programs. Now those guys are lining up against you. You can't even keep a quarterback that you signed a 2-year contract when Darian Mensah came from Tulane to Duke, who tried to walk away. I'm going to make this point. These kids want to be treated like pros. Treat them like pros. You violate a contract, you get sued into the Stone Ages. Shout out to one Stone Angel watching. You got to have some order in the court. Vanderbilt, what they're doing in the portal, what they're doing in recruiting. Talk about the GM and the back office people, like to call them, that make everything work.
Yeah, well, a lot of that's Barton Simmons, who people know used to be a recruiting analyst at 24/7, where I am. Does a great job. And I think this year's class did some of the same things they did a year ago. Obviously you have to beef up your line of scrimmage. They lost a lot of old guys there. That's where they got better from a year ago is they went and got a bunch of 4th, 5th, maybe 6th-year guys in the portal who could play on the offensive line. That was a big focus again this year. Of course, they landed 3 tight ends to replace Eli Stowers, who no one guy is going to replace, but that helps. And landed a receiver from Old Dominion to replace the one they lost in Trey Richardson, who was really spectacular the last 4 or 5 games of the season for them. So that may not have been the question you asked me, but in terms of like how are they doing in the portal, I think those are the things that stood out.
I don't think I could have asked for a better response because you explained it. I mean, 3 guys, yeah. I mean, Stowers, a quarterback at A&M. What do you go to New Mexico State? Then the honk if you were a former Texas A&M quarterback.
Right.
Jimbo could find them. He was good at birthing the babies. He just wasn't good at raising them. All those quarterbacks out there. That was tough to watch. All right. Looking at the SEC, and I'm asking everybody, our esteemed panel yesterday with Bartu, Ellis Johnson, and Pete Cordelli, how's the SEC going to get back on top? Dave's talking about the SEC this year kind of stayed here, and in some cases went down a step or two, top to bottom. Big Ten coaching a little bit better. Then you look at alumni bases, average income per graduate. Big Ten's running wild in all those places. In the past, they didn't put the money into football that we do in the South. Now they are. Like you said, it only takes one Mark Cuban at Indiana.
Yeah.
It could take one Tim Cook at Auburn. You've already got Yellowwood. And that's anyway. Just every school's got them, but how's it going to be 3 years in a row, the Big Ten, 3 different schools, and the most unlikely of all, Indiana just did it. Who's next? Northwestern?
Oh, man. Who knows? I mean, I just think we make conclusions like the SEC has been passed at the table by the Big Ten, which like it has right now. But I'm just not sure this is an era where I'm not going to say nothing lasts forever. Well, I will say that. I just wonder. Here's what I'm trying to say. That things have changed so quickly, and there's so much parity. And it's occurring to me while I'm doing baseball. I'm looking at all the rosters in the SEC. Like, it's hard to separate a lot of these teams from maybe even 4 to 10 or 11 or 12. I mean, football's even maybe more competitive. So that's how that looks too. I guess what I'm getting at is this, Rob. I just see the landscape being so competitive that it's going to be hard for anybody to run away and hide. I think the SEC's been so good at football for so long. And because of the weather here, you've got so many of the top prospects who are located in this area. I don't see that the SEC is going away. I mean, we may look up next year and it may have taken its place back at the top of the mountain. Yeah. But I have wondered, in like, at all this has gone, and I'm going a lot of directions, and I apologize, but it's college football now, right?
Yeah.
I do wonder sometimes, like you look at like A&M and Texas, and like traditionally you're going, okay, how did they not bring home more hardware than they did? You know the situation at Auburn. Too many cooks in the kitchen a lot of times. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But I just wonder, like, our slogan down here is it just means more. And I do wonder, like, if some of that has gotten in the way. Whereas you got places like Indiana where football didn't mean so much, but you had access to money and you had a coach who knew how to put it together.
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes if our own chaos in the South kind of works against us a little bit in that regard.
Yeah, it might, and I think it's always, darkest before dawn. I think the SEC will come back. I just think the schools are now they're going to close doors, double down, triple down, and say, okay, we want to be back on top because it does mean more. Yancy Porter has power in Oxford, Mississippi. A lot of people don't. Man, first off, thank you, as well as Chris and everybody for watching as well, for joining us. Yancy, what first off is going on at Ole Miss right now? Am I correct that only 4 players decided to go with Lane Kiffin to LSU? And also, anything new on Trinidad Chambliss?
No, they're still trying to wait with Trinidad. The NCAA This is headed. They're just showboating the NCAA. They're my best guess is they're going to deny the appeal, and then there's going to be an injunction from the court system that's going to allow them to play next year. And it's just a shame. The NCAA is the NCAA. We've seen what they've been about, so pre-NIL and post-NIL. And I've always said they're the most corrupt organization in American businesses, politics, all of it put together. You just can't wipe them out, and they need to be wiped out. It needs to be started over with different leadership. It's just a shame. You got quarterbacks playing 7 years. This guy's played 2.5 years of football. That's it. And you got what's the guy from LSU that's in his 7th year now, 7 years later?
TJ Finley.
I mean, Lewis Moore at Indiana is on his 7th year. It's just there's a lot of hypocrisy, and it's the reason why that the NCAA can't be protected from their own rulings from the court of laws through the United States, because this is stuff you get from them.
Yeah, it is crazy. We have Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Catch it Monday nights, 6 p.m. on Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis, and all over the great state of Mississippi on Super Talk Mississippi, and Chris Lee of Southeastern 16 up in Franklin in the mid-state. Chris, you heard what he just said about Trinidad Chambliss. And here's Hoosier Dave. It just means more until bowl season. Then those games don't count. I love you, Hoosier Dave. I'm guessing he's from Terre Haute or maybe Santa Claus, Indiana, where Jay Cutler was from, former Vanderbilt quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Chris, you heard what Yancy just said. Trinidad, it's even in debate. And then TJ Finley, I guess TJ's working on his master's or PhD. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Did he land at LSU for real?
Yeah, that's where he started his career.
Did he? Has he come back?
Yeah, that's where. I want to say
I
maybe.
thought you were kidding.
No. TJ Finley for LSU. Yeah, that's where he started his career.
Oh, I know that, but he
transferred to Auburn after that.
He did. He was at Auburn.
He's been like 6 places, I think.
He was in the French Foreign Legion for 6 months.
I can't. My head just spins. I don't know how. I mean, people have asked me on our site, like, can you make a list of, who's got how much? Like, are you kidding me? Would you like to? Like lock me up in a dungeon for a month to try to figure this out and then be wrong about it? I mean, I can't keep track anymore. It's just, it's silly.
Well, everybody's tired of the silliness of players playing 6-7 years at 6 different schools. But when you got a situation where his player literally has played 2.5 years of football and a year and a half of that's at D2, you're even debating about this. The kid missed a year. He was sick. That's what medical red shirts, the definition is, right? He had repeated mono, the bad tonsils, and that's where everything started kind of getting fuzzy, because the media starts like, oh, this guy just had his tonsils taken out. He's trying to get a medical red shirt. What a joke the system is. No, he had repeated mono. If you get hit with mono and your spleen and the other organs, he never practiced or played that year. He had documentation from doctors before the season started, during the season, and after the season. I mean, it's selective. It's the NCAA is just, if you could get them to be honest and not corrupt and say this is black and white policies and this is the way it is, and we're not going to make special exemptions for this school or that school. And this is, the reason that everybody's enjoying this new era is because everybody has a chance, because the NCAA protected a dozen or so blue bloods and let them buy the players. Look, let's say it. Nick Saban, during his years, all of his players are sitting there posing on sign day with the Dodge Charger, right? And then you got a school like Ole Miss that gets put on probation because a player slept on the coach's couch. Yeah. It's just ludicrous the way that the NCAA is. So they wanted to protect the money schools, so to speak. And now it's opening it up where everybody has a chance to win. So there's so much more interest. And now the NCAA, what the goal is to cause so much chaos like this, where all the people are saying, here, we want you to iron with the rule with an iron fist again. So then they can be in complete control again. That's the reason they're letting things get the way that they are.
Yeah, somebody check the ringers on a phone. I think I can hear a ringing on here. I'm not sure if it's what it is. But Yancy, I totally agree with you. It was a protected cabal by the NCAA. And Jackie Sherrill talked about the NCAA office in Indianapolis. It's run by Big Ten people. I mean, they live there, and it's not all Big Ten, but Chris, the SEC, this case right now, and I think this is cool because the first time I've had the two of y'all on together, great back and forth banter. I don't see how they can deny Trinidad. If TJ Finley, I mean, that's insane. This guy, 7 years, it ain't going to happen, TJ. I admire your tenacity, though.
Look, here's the issue as I see it. You tell me where I get this wrong.
How do I get it with attached or not?
Everybody screams at the NCAA, hey, and I'm not defending the NCAA. I'll get to them in a minute. Hey, make some rules that everybody can follow and get some consistency and get some guidelines. And for the longest time, it was really hard to get that extra year of eligibility. If you want to go back 10 or 15 years ago, it had to be okay, or to transfer. If you had a parent that had cancer and you wanted to move closer to home, you'd get those. But then you'd have situations where, it was similar to that, and the NCAA would say no, and we yelled at the NCAA for a long time. Well, you guys are being ridiculous and blah, blah, blah. And the NCAA was the judge, the jury, all those things, and the prosecution. So you have that. And then everything breaks loose the last 5 years where, there are no guardrails for the most part. The NCAA will flex on somebody every now and then, as you guys are seeing in Oxford. But we're screaming okay, let's stop this ridiculousness. You saw it in Tuscaloosa this weekend with Charles Bediako, where the NCAA tried to stop it. Alabama got a booster judge to make a ruling and throw in there, oh, by the way, the NCAA can't penalize you guys for anything, including what the NCAA had suggested doing, which was not letting the games that Bediako plays in count. So you have everybody yelling at the NCAA to establish order. And then it goes to the courts. Anytime somebody doesn't like something, they go to court, and the NCAA loses 90-something% of the time. And then we yell at the NCAA again for not having rules and not enforcing them. Well, who makes the rules? It's also the schools.
Yeah.
So the schools agree to something, and this is all a big circle. I'll drop the last part in a second. Everybody yells at the NCAA for not having control. The NCAA says, well, hey, look, the schools are the ones that made the rules, and now they're not going to abide by them. But then it goes to court again, and the court basically says, well, you can't do what you're trying to enforce because your model's illegal. So we're stuck in this loop that just kind of never seems to end, is the way I see it. And I think until you split sports off, you say, hey, we've got something for the top 64 teams in the FCS or whatever, the Power 4 teams. And you do the same thing for basketball and baseball and women's soccer. You have them kind of as their own independent leagues, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know how that exactly works out because they still fall under the umbrellas of schools and funding and all kinds of things. But it's a model that clearly isn't working. And I don't think it's going to work. We're going to have more chaos until you get something resembling collective bargaining, where everybody agrees on it. And then you got to have stiff penalties like the NFL and the NBA do. If you get caught tampering or whatever, man, you lose draft picks, you lose money until there are penalties that can stick that people are afraid of. And the hard thing too is even when the schools set the rules, right? You got, Miami or whoever out there just going, hey, nobody's sticking to these. So why should we? And then you got the people who maybe if anybody wants to play by the rules, they follow suit. Yeah. And you just have this big mess that we've got.
Yeah. Yancy, respond to that. I mean, I'm looking here at the Athletic website. There's Kurt Signetti. Boy, is he bringing back, revolutionizing the bowling shirt, man. He's got the best collection of bowling shirts of any coach I've ever seen. But Yancy, at Ole Miss right now, man, that bar has been raised. It's never been better in your and mine lifetime to be an Ole Miss Rebel.
Yeah. You got to give Lane Kiffin a lot of credit for that, as much as anger there is about what's happened since he's left, not why he left, but since he's left. He did an outstanding job of turning the program around, changing the mindset. And then you got to give the chancellor, the athletic director, and the CEO of the Grove Collective, the collective arm of Ole Miss, a ton of credit. When you have three great leaders, this is going to be what it's like for all of the colleges. You can get the best coach or the worst coach, but if you don't have those three, your chancellor, your AD, and whoever's the head of your collective, if you don't have all three of those working together hand in hand, trying to lead that coach of whatever sport you have, it's not going to work. And right now, Ole Miss has all three dynamics. And it's a good time to be a Rebel. There's no doubt.
Yancy, you said something last week, and I mentioned this to Ralph Russo and to Chris earlier. With the rev sharing, it's $20.5 million this year. You're likely going to see the traditional football schools go back to being football schools, and basketball schools go back to basketball. But the surprise outlier here is Kentucky spent allegedly $22 million on basketball, and they're not great. But what is going to happen? And we've only got a few minutes left with SEC basketball going forward with the current rules.
Well, each SEC school is spending between $13 and $14 million for their football program. You got two of that $20 million that goes to the past student athletes. So that leaves you $18 million for the rest of the school. It's going to go back to what I've been saying for over a year now when revenue sharing got passed. The Villanovas, the St. John's, the Georgetowns, all these programs that don't have football programs or low D1 or D2 AA programs. They're the basketball, the storied powerhouses are going to go back in the SEC. What we've seen these last couple of years, there's nowhere to go but down because the SEC schools are not going to spend this kind of money on basketball. It's going to go back to football unless they will open the doors for these NIL deals and allow a little bit more than what the original committee said they were going to allow. $600. You got to go through the committee, get it passed, and so forth. If they loosen that up, and then the SEC will continue to thrive in all the sports.
Wow, I mean it's a hell of a description, Chris. We got a couple of minutes, about 45 seconds. Respond to that. I like that.
Well, there's an aside in there that was interesting. You mentioned the Big East for basketball. The Big East was the league that should have been set up to dominate with this setup, with those schools not having football. The Big East is the worst it's been in basketball since I don't even know when. That is something I would have never predicted this year.
You're right. I mean, where we think we've got it figured out, and then there's another surprise. So go ahead.
Yep.
Yance, 15 seconds. When do we hear something definitive on Trinidad Chambliss? This is ridiculous. Exhibit A, TJ Finley. That's all I would remind them of.
I think the NCAA will make it within the week, but regardless of what the NCAA decides, there will be an injunction. He will be playing football next year for Ole Miss.
All right. Hey, thank you both, Yancy Porter, Chris Lee, Ralph Russo, Jordan Davis-Hill, executive producer Brendan Martin. Thank y'all so much for sharing your time, and we will do it again next week. I hope you get your power back on. All right, let me say something real quick before we go. LandersFordMemphis.com, Poplar and Houston Levy, and the new location, I-240 Mount Moriah. That's an iconic location. You know what? It was there forever. The biggest dealer Ford in America. Landers Ford, the #1 Ford dealership in the Mid-South. Open every day except Sunday. Right down the street from Hewlett Gun, Boot Clothing Company, Rumble Boxing, HempForPros.com, and look, MyTownRoofing.com. Get out there. Do yourself a favor. Get your roof looked at. You don't want your roof caving in with all the snow that we have. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We are the most blessed people in the history of the world, okay? Help your neighbors right now. If they don't have power, find a way to help them. You know you can. Hey, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.